Hey everyone, we are back. This is Jasmine and Chaute. Hey girl.
Hey, how you doing?
I am doing well. How are you doing?
I'm well. It's a beautiful day. It's a good day to have a great day. How about that?
Let's go. Great day. Okay. All right. Sometimes, yeah, that's kind of sketchy, so we're going to choose to have a great day today.
Yes.
Amazing. So, everyone, we are back with another episode. And in this one, I am grateful to be able to say that we are going to share a little bit how Chaute and I connected because thank you very much for tuning into the episode up till now. But I thought about it and I said, Chaute, you know, let's tell the people how we connected because this Balance Relationships podcast didn't just come out of nowhere.
Hmm.
So, um, I just wanted to start off there today so that people can know a little bit more about us. And we're not going to give you our bios, we're not going to give you our all of our credentials and everything of that nature. And at the same time, I realize when we're talking about having balanced relationships, relationships start at a certain point. Does that make sense, Shante?
Definitely. There's
Okay.
always a starting point.
There's always a starting point. So, what I wanted to share is that we met through through a community through Dr. Eric Thomas's Breathe University in
Hmm.
2022. And I was just like, wow, that's been 2 years
Can you
ago,
believe it? Time flies.
right? I mean, I looked back and I was just like, oh, that was just 2022. Um, but in that time frame, what I thought that was really interesting was that I've heard of Dr. Thomas, but I reached out to their community because they had something going on, and you were able to connect with people. Um, for me, community settings are important because I come from a family where I have four sisters and I was raised with my mom and my dad. I mentioned that not to um, make myself better than other people because people that say that they were raised by a single parent household, I don't think that's one better than the other. It is my experience.
Hmm.
The reason why I share that is because um, while I had two parents in the home, while we went to Christian schools, we went in the Christian community, there was still a gap that I realized as I was getting older, where now I have language for it, so I will just say it. The emotional piece in connecting in community, I didn't feel that. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Yeah. So I realized throughout my journey, I have often, without knowing the language at the time, sought out or looked for different places where I felt like I could be heard, have a voice, or understood. And that's what led me to the community. We actually were in the same squad, so to speak. I didn't know this until like a little bit afterwards that there was a shift in how things were done. So gratefully, I came in at a time, and I'll let you speak to it as well. I came in at a time where they had smaller groups to the large group. And honestly, for me, as a person who's often been in larger groups, family wise, friendships, and just in a lot of areas where there's a lot of people, that was the piece that actually helped me connect with you because I was able to be in a smaller group and we were able to talk one on one. I was able to get in your community with SHEPOSSE. I was able to know that you are an author, read your book, purchased your book. And the reason why I thought that was important for us to just explain to people because, or me to just share my side, I didn't know who Chaute was. You're in a totally different state, but I would have missed out on the blooming friendship that we have, and even
Hmm.
now a connected partnership in this podcast. And it was something that I know that I need for my life as I am moving in the emotional healthy relationship maturity and skills and all of that good stuff. So that's
Hmm.
what I wanted to share.
Nice, nice. And I think it's awesome that you were able to kind of bring about your own experiences from family and what you were lacking and do the work to say, okay, well, I'm missing some emotional pieces. I'm missing some connections. I really want to know, how do I even cultivate these types of things for myself? And while you sought these things out, you were learning for yourself and then cultivating business/friendships in the meantime as well. And I know, just because I know you, I know that you're doing the work in family. So with your family members, you're sharing your knowledge. So it's helping you to be just be very, very well-rounded in all
Yes,
areas of your life when it comes to balanced relationships.
most definitely. Yes. So tell me why you came into the community for the Breathe University community. I just want
Well, I mean,
to.
E.T., I actually knew him or know him um, from 1999-ish, from back
Ah,
then,
okay.
because he
Okay.
actually came to my church when I was a youth, and we built connection then. And a group of us and a group of his people were like just hanging out, getting to know each other, kind of like just going and spreading the word. And he's just so amazing to really just help youth and help to break the cycle, because that was what his ministry was called back then, right? So that's
Okay.
kind of how I got to know him, and I've always followed him after that. So throughout that time, and I saw that he had this Breathe community happening, I'm like, yeah, well, you know what? I really want more community in business. I really want to be able to form more connections. So
Hmm.
that kind of intrigued me to say, well, let me see what this is about. And just like you said, I joined when there were the squads, and I really loved the squad because then we got to have like a close knit, and we
Yes.
stayed close after that. Like we got a whole name for ourselves and everything, and we try and like check in on each other and keep up to keep abreast of what each individual is doing in business, and praying for each other when we see that folks are having babies or have someone a passing in the family. Or so we've built connection, right? And that's really what I needed in that moment. So I praise God for that opportunity, and that's how we cultivated our friendship, and then from there our business relationship, to where we both are really invested in having healthy relationships and balanced relationships. So, a tiny bit about myself: I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Florida and Georgia. But I also am a restoration expert or a restoration specialist, helping folks to cultivate healthy relationships with themselves, with others. I specialize in working with families of separation, divorce, co-parenting, blended families. So that's near and dear to my heart, to really restore and to help folks to feel at peace with themselves, and knowing how to have these desired relationships that gives you peace because it's balanced, right? So I think it was amazing when we said, well, you know what? Let's
Hmm.
get this podcast going to help folk, because there's so many folk out there in the world that's seeking balanced relationships. So we're not just focusing on one type of relationship, but
Yeah.
relationships as a whole. It could be our parents or our children or our working relationships. Like there's so many relationships out there, and we want to just be able to help. So that is how we came about to say, well, let's do this, and let's make this mark in the world, to have a resource that folks are able to go to have these desired relationships.
Yes. And marking in the world is definitely what we're doing now. And I'm
Mhm.
so grateful that, like you said, we both at the same time had that urge or that need to make a connection with community. Like you said, starting off in a business context and then allowing ourselves the framework to see what else could come abroad or come about with it. What I
Yeah.
love too is that we have the connection of the DISC assessment through ET's community or Dr. Thomas's community. And then one thing that I appreciate is that you talked about your aunt and how she actually helps families.
Mm-hmm.
So typically, what we have done is that we provided something as a call to action or a resource for people
Yes.
to be able to connect the dots. So, okay, so if those who are listening, you don't know about the DISC assessment, it is a personality assessment that's been used and um, that helps shows like four dominant traits in people. So I can say that from the DISC assessment that I have, it's DISC. So there are different types. I am a high I, and then I am a high C. Excuse me, a high D. So high I and a high D, which the I is for the interactive, and then the D is more for directive. Um, in the language of the flight assessment through Eric Thomas's company, I am a flight attendant. So I'm that person who wants to make sure everybody's taken care of. And then I'm a pilot. So I want to make sure we get to our destination. So those are my two high traits. And then Chaute, I just want you to share who you are from the DISC assessment.
Well, you'll have to explain it. However, I am a high S,
Okay.
and then I'm that like mid-range for the I. So those are
Okay.
my two high ones, the S and the I.
Okay, so the S is the conscientious air traffic controller. And then you're also a people person, which is the flight attendant. So those are um, your two dominant traits. The reason why I wanted to bring it that way to the community and for this episode is that the more that we understand who we are, the more we can interact and the more that we can understand that just because we're wired a certain way, that doesn't mean that everybody else is wired that way. That really helps us when you're talking about balanced relationships to have awareness for yourself
Mm-hmm.
as well as an awareness of how do I need to show up for someone else and be able to communicate to them the best way they need to be communicated to. That's a big rub sometimes where we're like, many times, well, this is just how I am. But in a maturing, balanced relationship, I can understand how I am. And then I can still ask myself, how do I need to adjust so that I can come into your world and so that I can be in a way that's hopeful, that is healthy, and that is best for our connection. So your aunt actually is someone who helps families, individuals, and corporations. But I really am grateful that she comes from a family perspective because sometimes we only focus on what we do for a living and we
Mm-hmm.
don't focus on the family part. So can you share
Yeah.
more about your aunt?
Well, definitely. And I'll first just touch a little bit on what you were saying before, like for myself, that S deals with support, right? So I'm so big on supporting others. And I think it's so interesting that we can see that you're high in the D and then you're high in the I. And I think you might have been higher in D than I, but those are your highs, right? And I'm high in the S and I'm higher in S than I, right? So we can come together and we can now understand the differences that we bring to the table. We have our strengths and we have our differences. And with that, we can come with open eyes to know how to work best with each other, to know how to engage, to know how to be more empathetic to the differences and respect those differences, but have an open eye to say, okay, well, this is the way that this person is wired. This is the way that this person thinks. So I can better understand and know how to engage with them. So I think that's a beautiful understanding to have when you're working with family members because there's so
Yeah.
many different temperaments. There's so many different ways that people show up. And we can have like a negative taste in our mouth when we see that someone is so different than us. But if we are able to do this disc assessment, we're able to get the coaching that we need as a family or as an individual, or even as a corporate employee or someone, then we are able to now use it in the various areas of our lives. So I think it's amazing that Hyacinth Burton, we're going to share her website, but it'll also be in the show notes. But her website is humanityelements.com. Humanityelements.com. So we'll share her information, but she actually offers coaching along with you being able to complete the DISC assessment. And all of this is super important because it helps us to be well-rounded and helps us to have the balanced relationships that we desire.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm going to make a change and clarify. I said that you were traffic control. You are a grounds crew. So that stable, the S, the high S is that stabilizing. What that means is that you don't have to always be at the forefront. You're just going to get it done. You're going to get
Mhm,
it done. So I
mhm.
just want to clarify that for everyone listening. So there is the D for decisive, the I for interactive, the S for stabilizing, and then the C for cautious. That's some of the insights that we have. I actually am higher on the I, so that's why
Oh,
I
look
have
at you.
to pull. Yeah, I have to pull back in my pilot. I was very um, surprised that I was so high on the D, but it makes sense when I started really looking at myself. But that's why I have to pull back sometimes to make sure that I'm just not running on autopilot, so to speak, because it can be
Mhm,
easier for me with certain things. So I appreciate that we are able to have the common language, even if we're at different points in our language, because that's what really helps us to have uh, healthy, balanced relationships with ourselves, with other
mhm.
people, and then even with each other. So,
Yes, yes.
what I'm not saying, everybody, is that I am, or Chaute is perfect in this. I
Oh,
am really wanting, and I'm grateful that you are able to allow us today to do this, Chaute. It's only been 2 years. So, it's not something that we are just pretending like we know everything about the assessment, but we are willing and we have been willing to put in the work, to connect with other people, to expand our minds, and to look at how we can have balanced relationships in all our
yes,
relationships.
yes.
So,
Until next time,
all right,
take
stay
care.
balanced.